Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Of Sunday, December 17th, 2023. Today we have a fascinating conversation in store for you about how techno-optimistic films can help change the cultural perception and the dominant narratives about longevity. So joining us today is our distinguished panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party officers and members, including our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, our Director of Longevity Outreach, Ben Ballweg, our Legislative Director, Jason Geringer, our Director of Marketing and 2020 U.S. Presidential Candidate, Charlie Kam, our Director of Citizen and Community Science and 2024 U.S. Vice Presidential Candidate, Daniel Tweed, our member from Texas of the Texas Transhumanist Party, Alan Crowley, and our special guests from today are from JellyfishDAO, which is a community to help the production and promotion of longevity films and documentaries. Joining us is Daniel Solinger, who is a film producer and director of the film Immortality or Bust. We had a previous Virtual Enlightenment Salon with Daniel in early 2022, which I encourage you to watch. We have Tim Maupin, who is director of the film The Last Generation to Die, and Amy Schoof, who is the producer of the films Tesla and Marjorie Prime. So welcome to Daniel and Tim and Amy. And before we get into your remarks, there is a brief introductory video about JellyfishDAO that we are going to show.
What if we could go on, hold the light a little longer? What if your parents could grow healthier and stay? What if all the knowledge and potential you'd gained over your life wasn't simply lost? At JellyfishDAO, we're envisioning a future without the suffering and negative effects of aging. Hi, I'm Tim Maupin. I'm a writer, director, and cinematographer, and the filmmaker behind The Last Generation to Die, which is a longevity short film that we're now adapting into a feature film. The problem we're tackling at JellyfishDAO is how to get the public to be more on board with longevity at large and how to communicate these ideas in a positive light. Our mission is to tell stories and use the power of cinema to get people to rethink aging and many of the associated negative concerns with longevity, to which cinema and story are uniquely positioned to do. Greater public acceptance would move the science faster and ultimately more quickly reduce suffering and save more lives. Movies and stories are extremely powerful. People also make decisions a lot based on emotion, not always entirely based on logic. There's even data to back this up. A Yale study with the movie The Day After Tomorrow is one example of such powerful communication and transformation. Research was conducted on people who'd viewed the movie versus people who hadn't seen the movie. The people who had seen the movie were more apt to be thinking about climate change and even making decisions based on that information, such as purchasing a more efficient car and talking to friends and family about climate change.
I'm Keith Comito, president of the nonprofit Lifespan.io, which raises funds and awareness for research aimed at extending healthy human lifespan. In addition to that, I also help run research and development projects for Disney. To help the cause of longevity, nothing can help us get accelerated faster than basically bringing the public along with us with positive storytelling, positive visions of the future. One of the non-obvious things that I think actually holds back the pace of research is not seeing the value of public engagement initiatives and how that has a force multiplying effect. So even if all you cared about was just dollars going into research, I think funding media projects that get the public excited, informed, and engaged on this topic is a huge force multiplier. And that's one of the reasons why I'm choosing to spend some of my time working with JellyfishDAO.
I'm Lawrence. I'm a deal flow steward at VitaDAO. We're trying to convince the world that bringing aging under medical control is the most impactful thing, it's desirable. So we're doing media, showing the world how mind-blowingly amazing it would be if we had dramatically extended healthy lifespans. And instead of talking with our smart words, we need to inspire people through media, through art. Show, not tell.
We're bringing together a community of longevity advocates, filmmakers, entrepreneurs, and wall breakers. I'm in the film industry for almost a decade. I don't have a favorite longevity movie yet because we are about to make one. My film is called Genetic and is a thriller around a journalist investigating patients treated with a miraculous gene therapy. Our goal is to offer a fresh, positive perspective on longevity. And we want to do that in a commercially appealing way in order to reach mainstream audiences.
Hi, I'm Amy Schoaf. I have a company, Intrinsic Value Films. I started the company over 20 years ago with my partner, Eisen Robbins. We've made quite a few films. I think our company just made our 40th movie in March. And they're all different genres. So I've made movies like psychological thrillers to supernatural to sort of smarter sort of science-themed movies like Tesla and like Marjorie Prime and Experimenter. We, face our own mortality, and so this idea of aging and how we age, I think is a subject matter that we all are going to be concerned about, whether now or later.
Hi, I'm Galia Belcor. I'm the director-creator of Ageless. Ageless is a documentary about the massive impact we will see when biological aging becomes treatable.
I'm the founder of and CEO of Newton. It's a Q&A website for blockchain developers. So it's crucial to have those positive technological movies for the future. I think really culture drives a lot of technological innovations. You see a lot of scientists are inspired by science fiction books or TV shows they watch in their youth.
We're making the rare positive films on longevity instead of dystopian. We're inviting funding from forward-thinking, visionary folks to help usher in the longevity movement faster through the power of stories. Stories in film, videos, podcasts, video games, and more. As an insider, you'll be a part of creative conversations, helping to guide artistic choices, and have access to cool, unique art and NFTs, including ones that may directly help fund research. We're starting off with 3 curated, excellent projects. 3 feature films around longevity, 1 documentary, and 2 fiction films. We'll be seeking out and curating other top-notch longevity media projects as we continue to build our community and DAO. Please join us and help us all live longer, healthier lives.
All right, thank you for providing that video for us. It was quite informative as to JellyfishDAO's work. And now I will invite each of our guests to provide some brief opening remarks about JellyfishDAO and any context that you want to furnish for the discussion today. So let's start with Daniel.
Hello, I'm Daniel Solinger, a film producer and director. And I have to give credit to Tim Maupin, who put together that video and who has been a very instrumental in putting this DAO together. We've been working on this for a couple of years and have just gotten to the point where we really feel like it's time to launch, it's time to engage the community, and it's time to bring people into our mission. We started out a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, because we felt that was basically I feel like that's the wave of the future, not just for DeSci, for funding science projects, but for media as well. And it took us a while to get all the pieces together. We have a core team of 12 people, filmmakers, longevity experts, and blockchain experts. So the sort of Venn diagram of all of them overlapping is what helps us to create JellyfishDAO and make it available to the public. And as our mission video stated, our goal and objective is to make positive, not dystopian movies, films, television shows, and media products that inspire people and move the industry forward, rather than a lot of what I see as Hollywood's dystopian view of technology. This is an opportunity, or gives a channel and gives an opportunity to create a community that can help lift these stories up and into the mainstream public's consciousness and dialogue. And we have 3 projects, as was mentioned in the video. As many of you may know, I did a documentary called Immortality or Bust about the genesis of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. And I'm now working with other filmmakers on a project called Ageless, which is another documentary where we really dive into the art and science and possibilities of what's available in the medical and scientific community to radically extend our lives. And I think I'll throw it over to Tim to pick it up from there.
Thanks, Daniel. Hello, everyone. Yeah, thank you for that intro. I feel like the video does a pretty good job of explaining where I'm coming from. I like the idea that I'm better on video than doing stuff live. But yeah, I think just to add some context to what Daniel said, in addition to what the video said, yeah, my journey into longevity actually came through film itself, which is, I think, kind of an interesting way in. I made the short film, The Last Generation to Die, which is the feature film adaptation that I'm working on at the moment. And, when I first made the film, it was just an interesting topic, sort of a curiosity. I felt like it was a good place to set a story in, sort of the drama between the future and the present and the past, and how technology sort of permeates those things. But throughout that process, as I began to research more and talk to more people and kind of really dive in a bit more, the arguments are pretty compelling once you start getting in there in terms of longevity and living longer, healthier lives and all the associated things that come with that. But I would also add too that I think, in addition to what Daniel said, is, yeah, Hollywood's definitely filled with a lot of dystopian films. And I think it's refreshing to kind of approach with something that is more positive. The challenge there is, you still need drama, you still need conflict. And so how, I think part of our challenge, and potentially even with documentary, but more in fiction world, how do you still have that conflict and, have that sort of compelling drama that draws us all in without necessarily being inherently dystopian? And I think my film does that. And again, it's a great challenge. At least I hope it does that. But I think it doesn't inherently paint the technology as negative. It's sort of, the drama plays out in the human sphere, which, in my opinion, I don't think, even as technology moves on and as the future goes forward, humans are always still going to have some drama. So I think, just how we get along with each other, how we relate, and how we learn and grow. And so I think that for me is where, I find the interesting part of it. So, but yes, as Daniel said, JellyfishDAO is sort of a mission to, help grow our projects, but also we envision a future where we have a platform where we can invite other filmmakers, other artists, other creatives who are interested in making something in longevity, and to, curate those projects and filter that and just continue to support those projects as well. So, and I will toss it over to Amy. So,
Hi, Amy Schoaf. I came at this from a filmmaker point of view. I've been a producer for many years, made lots of movies, and my business partner and I, Eisen, who couldn't make it today, we both actually had, this is one of the connective tissues of our partnership from the very beginning. We both were having conversations about what supplements we were taking and how we wanted to both live to be at least 150. And so it's kind of interesting. It's come sort of full circle around, and we are producers of the documentary Ageless came to us, and we were like, this is something we've always been passionate about. We do more narrative projects, but this was a doc. And so we got involved, and it kind of picked up those conversations from the past and how we can, help tell stories. That's what we do. And so we feel like media is like one of the best ways to, get messages across. And so we are excited about that documentary. Daniel and I were just at the Longevity Summit last week at the Bucks Institute and interviewed some amazing people. And we're excited to follow a bunch of people that are like some of the leaders in the space, and would like to do more. And then we saw the synergies of technology and futurists. And so we, kind of we're a part of creating this DAO from the beginning. And
just excited to support filmmakers and to create messages that are changing the way we think about it, and not just like, oh, these crazy people that think they want to live forever. It's actually the technologies behind it and what we can do just to live healthier longer. And that's, I think, what's important to me. And so it's about the messaging and a positive messaging so that we can make changes in the world.
Yes, thank you very much to Tim and Daniel and Amy for all of your opening remarks. Now has come the time for questions from our panel and from the audience, and I will start with the first question, and that is, how does the DAO structure, the decentralized autonomous organization, help advance the mission of creating techno-optimistic longevity films? We have had other DAOs joining us for previous virtual enlightenment salons, including Longevity DAO, Cure DAO, and most recently Vita DAO. But I'm curious, in terms of film creation in particular, what are the structural aspects of a DAO that help to further these objectives?
That's a really good question. I'm a crypto enthusiast since 2013. So I've been watching the cryptocurrency market grow and change and iterate. And to me, it seems really abundantly clear that the sort of wall between content creator and audience is going away. You know, that people want to be more than just passive audience members in the media that they consume. They want to be active members. And I also see that the sort of economics of the way a lot of the cryptocurrency works has a network effect. So it's more than just somebody, paying $2 to watch a movie on Amazon or whatever, that it's that ability to be a stakeholder into projects, that there's potentially financial upside to just be supporting the project. One of the things I've been doing lately is collecting comics as NFTs. And I love comics and I enjoy reading the comics, but it's also an investment. And I know as a collectible, it'll be worth something in the future. I've done the same thing with Lord of the Rings and with the original Superman. And to me, like, this is where I believe that cryptocurrency or blockchain will basically swallow everything, and I was the person in 1992 who was running around telling anybody who would listen that the internet was going to swallow everything. And at the time, people would just look at me strange, and they would say, well, why would I use email if, the US Postal Service works fine? I mean, I literally got that response on many, many occasions. And I was trying to say, like, it's going to be so much more than email, And I think that's where blockchain is at today. I think people are getting an increasing understanding of it, but it is going to be a lattice that is going to underlie everything that happens. The whole world will eventually be tokenized, in my opinion, every part of it. And this is, as a futurist or as a forward thinker, like, I want to help and be a part of that wave. And I feel like the decentralized autonomous organization was a great structure to use. It enables people to get involved if they love longevity and if they love media and they love that intersection of the two of them. They can get involved, they can participate, they can hopefully see an upside to the NFTs. But beyond that, having NFTs really gives you a ticket, a golden ticket in a way. Like, it provides so much utility. So let's say we have a new project and we want to do a coin offering for that project. Like, we can airdrop tokens to everybody who's already owns NFTs. We can use NFTs to create invites to have discussions with the filmmakers or the cast, or be a part of the creative decisions, to have governance over the DAO, over which projects get picked and such. So this technology, like as I said, I think is going to underlie everything. I just want to make sure it's being utilized in the areas that I care about, which is longevity, filmmaking, and I just thought it was a tremendous opportunity to start something that will really move everything forward. It can really create a lot of participation from like-minded enthusiasts who may not have other ways to get involved in either media or longevity. And so that was a big reason behind, for me at least, behind the building it. We were very lucky in our team. We have people from Lifespan, we have people from VitaDAO, so we have some really seasoned. We certainly have seasoned filmmakers, which I'm really grateful for too. And maybe I take that a little bit of granted because I've made 70 movies, but it's nice to have that combination of really experienced filmmakers with top people in the longevity and blockchain space, and to all come together with a mission that I think is really important, which is we don't need to die. If we put enough, we certainly don't need to die from aging, and if we put enough attention and focus, and if we can inspire people to get on board with that message, then we can change the world. So that's sort of why I'm involved, why I got involved, and maybe Tim, you can pick it up from there.
Yeah, thanks again, Daniel. Yeah, I think I would agree with a lot of that. I mean, admittedly, I kind of came into this without as much knowledge about blockchain, but I've learned quite a bit over the last 2 years or so. And I also believe that in some capacity, there's no doubt in my mind that blockchain will be a huge part of our future. I think there's a lot of specifics about different crypto and that may play out differently, but I think the idea of a DAO is just structurally sound. I think it's a very I mean, as you mentioned, you've had other DAOs. Obviously, VitaDAO is an incredibly successful DAO. They've sort of shown that you can put together a community and of like-minded folks, with the potential of financial reward. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways that these things can play out, and we are admittedly kind of in the early stages of our DAO. I think the NFT sale is basically around sort of a seed funding approach where we're using it to kind of launch and get an initial amount of funding. But there are sort of different mechanisms that will ultimately come into play with that. So the NFTs will give you a certain advantage when we eventually launch a token sale and that sort of thing. We do have a white paper that is available. So again, to some degree, building those things as we go. There's a lot of discussion around what types of bonuses you get. Some of the things we're thinking are, people will be able to be involved in some of the creative decision making around films and that sort of thing. And the cool thing about it too is these things can kind of grow as time goes on. You can initiate a proposal or something along those lines and continue to evolve and grow as the technology and also as the conceptual side of it does as well. And then just kind of on the more, just to bounce a little bit off of what Daniel was saying in terms of the future of it. I think there's you hear a lot of sort of negative talk about NFTs and things like that in certain aspects. My personal take is also that as we go further into a digital world, which is very clear that that's happening. I've long been a fan of augmented reality, and I mean, I've long thought that it's only a matter of time before the digital world is overlaid on our regular world. It only makes logical sense and sort of common sense in that way. And I've even worked a little bit on some virtual reality and augmented reality projects. And in my mind, once that happens and fully takes hold, which is kind of in its infancy right now, a digital asset will only hold more value. So for example, if you have a piece of art on your wall and you can only see it in AR, which again, as we go into the future, say 10, 20, however many years out, but you can own just that thing that's signed by a blockchain. It'll ultimately have the same value in my mind as an authentic piece of original art. Nowadays, I think it's really hard for a lot of people in common spaces to kind of, see it that way. And it sort of makes sense. I understand that. But if you think far enough out and know that we're heading into a digital sphere, to me, that only makes sense. And I think it's really cool that, we're Jellyfish and other DAOs and Other blockchain entities are kind of on the cusp of that. So, but yeah, in our case, it all leads to the idea of making great stories and art that ultimately leads even further down the funnel into, getting people interested in longevity and, hopefully more money going into research and science. So, and yeah, I don't know if you have anything else, Amy, to add to that?
I don't know. I was just going to say, I know you're asking about funding, and each project is different. Honestly, like you create budgets for each individual entity. So, like we have 3 right now that we're focusing on. The documentary docs are a little different because they sort of unfold, and so it's really you're paying for the editors and you're paying for certain things, so they tend to be a little bit less expensive than narrative. But it just depends. So each project will have its their own budget, and probably like a separate entity helping to fund those projects, where the folks involved in the DAO will have the first, they can be involved in each one of them, of course, and we expect them to. So those are, that's sort of how budgeting works. I use Movie Magic. You asked on the specific tool. That's kind of the standard budgeting software that people use. But yeah, so each one will be different, and we're still building it out of how it's going to work exactly. And yeah, so AI images, there's backgrounds that are really interesting. They're starting to do that, like for feature films, certain things like recreating backgrounds. Like, we don't want to recreate humans. I think actors and people involved, it's important that they get paid for their work, but definitely enhancing that and enhancing backgrounds is there, and the tools are amazing. I think 300 is one of the first that did that movie where all those backgrounds, that was all set extensions and all, backgrounds. And now like that, they're using that a lot. And I'm excited to use that more in our projects, just because it does reduce costs and has a really interesting look. And I think that is just going to keep expanding, and it creates new opportunities, and maybe things that were cost prohibitive for filmmakers. Now it really helps to expand that. So there's just really, really cool things happening in the world, and in the future of technologies and how they blend. So I feel like this conversation and this group of people are a really interesting way of moving forward and making these types of projects.
Yes, excellent. Thank you for all of those answers. And Tim had mentioned the dilemma that essentially drives a lot of filmmakers to create dystopian films, and that is that it's easier to have conflict in a dystopia. And in a film that is techno-optimistic, there still needs to be some sort of conflict, some sort of tension, but there could also be other motives that filmmakers could appeal to. For instance, as our viewer Super Fin Guy points out, adventure and discovery are exciting as well. So I would be curious to hear each of your comments about what would make a good, gripping, pro-longevity film in terms of the kinds of elements, the kinds of viewer responses that you would seek to elicit in order to make those films as appealing to mainstream audiences as the dystopian films might be today.
Well, the documentary that Amy and I are working on called Ageless, it's fairly easy in a way to show. We don't need a villain, because it's a documentary, and we can really show the people what's happening and inspire them with some of the characters of the people that are waking up every day and putting all their time and effort and resources into extending our health span and our lifespan. When we were at the longevity conference, Aubrey de Grey pitched a movie to us, which was basically that longevity escape velocity has been reached at the beginning of the story, and then something happens that it changes, and then they have to fight to get it back. And I found that to be like an interesting way to make something that you don't necessarily have a villain, that you can be on these topics and really create that feeling of excitement and wonder, in the process. I mean, for narrative storytelling, I think it has to be well thought through. But there's plenty of examples of, I'd love to make the Forrest Gump of longevity. Like he doesn't really have. There's no villain in that story. There's just the hero. And I think that's definitely possible. And I'll just comment a little bit about AI too, because it's such a big issue, and it's such a powerful tool, and we're already incorporating it. In all of our DAO meetings, we have an AI note taker that gives us summaries. I've been in post-production in films and been able to take an actor's voice and do what they call ADR, or have them say lines that are different than what they necessarily said by using the AI software. There'll definitely be movies that will be made in whole cloth through text prompts, and that day is coming. But I think that is going to be a very niche audience that will watch those kind of movies. They have digital influencers on Instagram, and and I follow them, and they're interesting, but they're interesting as a sort of curiosity or as an anomaly, not necessarily as something that I'm emotionally connected to the way I am human beings that they're posting on Instagram. But that space will exist. There will be entire movies that will be made that will be AI generated, and every single piece of the process will be have the opportunity for AI input or involvement, whether it be in the screenwriting, the performance. Maybe it's a live actor, but maybe they use the AI to train them on a dialect, or on other aspects of their creative process. Certainly behind the camera, the cameras and the lighting technology and all of that has definitely benefited from the growth of technology. I have a friend who invented an AR system for lighting control, and he's also a Steadicam operator. And he shot a music video where he was operating the Steadicam, and with his left hand, and with his right hand he was triggering lighting effects for the music video, and it was just one person. So I think there's going to be I think the technology is going to accordion down the size of like crews behind the camera. You'll be able to do a lot more with a lot less with these tools. I know that in the current round of contract negotiations, the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, and the Actors Guild all had AI language put into their contracts that essentially said you cannot replace a union member with an AI. That's not to say you can't use them, but you can't replace them. So if you're a writer, you can use AI, but the AI will not get a writing credit. The AI will not get paid. The writer using the AI has to do it within the guidelines of whatever studio they're working with. So each studio is coming up with their own list of AI guidelines that they sort of have to follow. Probably, I would imagine that the AI cannot be trained on copywritten material from their studio. Will be one of the guidelines that they'll have. So there's a sort of negotiation phase right now of exactly how AI fits in our industry. So I think there's the fear that it will displace everyone, but I don't think that's a realistic fear. Like I said, I think everybody's always going to want to see stories told by humans, starring humans, and directed by humans. I think that's always going to be a thing, but they put these protections in, and for actors, they don't want to be able to, scrape every Meryl Streep movie and create a new Meryl Streep movie without her knowledge and consent, which has been a problem. There has been cloned influencers already out there that are, AI chatbots with the look of a particular influencer. And I think that will be determined to be basically a copyright issue and fall under copyright protection, that sort of thing. So that's my hot take.
All right. Tim and Amy, do you want to comment on these subjects?
I'll jump in. Just use of AI tools for us in general. Like I actually took a course. My friend led a business consulting course to using AI tools because I wanted to be, forward thinking versus being behind. And it's been a game changer in terms of just like organization for the company and getting our, just our folders organized, our G Drive organized. Like, I mean, using it now it's amazing for coverage and notes on screenplays and things that we're doing. Like, we'll never just use the AI generated comments, but in addition to the people that are doing coverage for us, we have readers. The humans will, help sculpt it, but it does give a pretty good, synopsis of it. And so having that is kind of a game changer. In the last couple of months, I've been using that, those tools and keeping us organized. Like I said, we've got a notes taker for Zooms and conference calls, and there's just ways. I think that's going to start speeding up even more where, you have your AI assistants. And that sort of thing on the back end of things is really amazing. And like, it's about efficiency. And the more that you have the tools to be efficient, and it's not wasting time on these other elements. And so for me, that is really, really amazing. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen. But like Dan said, we shouldn't be replacing humans. We're using it as a tool. It's basically an amazing tool. In the same way, like I was there, doing business plans for this internet, startups back in the day. And like people were like, oh, they didn't believe where it was going to be. I mean, look at it. Can any of us imagine now not having an email and not having like a digital way of communicating? And like Minority Report, I remember like loving that film so much. I've always been a future thinker, and like, I think almost every technology in that movie now is actually real. It's happening. Like, we have all those things are actually happening. And at the time, people were like, oh my gosh, that's never going to happen. And so I think whatever we can think about in that land, that is going to happen. So let's make sure that the guidelines are there and that we're using it. We're using them. They're not using us, basically. I think that's where we need to be careful. Yeah. But it's exciting.
Yes. Tim, go ahead.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll try to. I think many good points were hit. I'll just try to throw in a little bit extra. Going backwards to the conflict dystopian question, as I sort of brought up earlier, is as you mentioned, is always kind of an ongoing conversation, and I do think it's a challenge. I think the idea you mentioned, Daniel, that Aubrey had mentioned, I think you told me that at one point too, which is a pretty clever approach, because it basically starts with everything good. You lose it, and then you have to go backwards to get to that. So you have kind of this nice inbuilt sort of conflict, or there's a nice arc with a resolution there. We did something a little bit similar. Galia, a friend of mine and who's part of the DAO, we have another short film that's kind of much further distant away. It's more on the back burner, but it's called The Program. And the basic concept is a world where people don't age, and there's a resource shortage crisis, and so there's an invention called aging to deal with this. And so this, you can kind of imagine where that goes in terms of like, some people volunteer for this thing called The Program to sort of help humanity, but it looks at aging in a light where, in a world that if you start with a world where it didn't exist and then you introduce that idea, I think it allows a sort of different perspective to think about it. So that's sort of one approach that we have. In my opinion, another really a genre, at least, that's ripe, I think, for some of this is horror. And there was a film called The Father, which isn't really a horror film, but it's definitely a drama, a very clever drama. But if anyone has seen it, it's I was not only moved, but also there's this sense of like just fear and basically it's about Alzheimer's essentially, but it's done in such a way, the structural sort of approach to the film is very smart, and it in my opinion, it presents a sort of tension and conflict. But I think, obviously diseases have certainly a horrific aspect, and I think that could be explored in, not like making light of them, but in a way that just sort of adds a little bit of urgency to the sense that, aging ultimately does cause a lot of these really terrible diseases and stuff like that. So I think there are definitely creative ways to approach it. And obviously that's something we're all thinking about and talking about within Jellyfish. And then AI, obviously a massive conversation. I think many of the major comments were already stated. I have to confess that I probably talk about this, several times a week with filmmaking friends as things are evolving really fast. Clearly, we're kind of in that exponential curve, moving moving fast, very forward. So it's basically like, I think pretty soon we'll definitely see a fully AI generated film, probably within the next couple of years, that actually looks good. I mean, obviously there's tons of stuff out there now, and Still World, Midjourney, I think is moving along incredibly fast and stuff looks really good. The video world is obviously a bit behind. It doesn't, things aren't quite there, but it's moving fast. And yeah, what does that mean for filmmakers? I mean, it's a little scary. It's a little exciting. It's kind of all those things. But as Daniel stated and Amy stated, I think, as we do with most things, it'll be a tool, and there'll be some tough parts we have to figure out about it. It'll certainly disrupt certain things. But there'll be really great things that, at this point, there's a democracy about it, where a kid in their basement could make what might be a really great movie that would have never been possible before. So I think that's a really exciting aspect to it. But yeah, I think there'll be a lot to work. I also really do agree that humans are always going to want to see other humans. So I think documentary is very safe. And I think just the idea of celebrity is still going to be there. I think it will be almost competing a little bit. I think there'll almost be like two worlds, like the quote unquote real filmmaking world, and then the AI generated world will begin to kind of sort of arise in parallel with that is kind of the way I see it happening. But who knows? It's a crazy speed that it's happening. So, but those are my general takes.
Yes, thank you, Tim. And I think the themes of AI being a tool and a collaborator with humans and augmenting humans, but not replacing humans, as well as the democratization aspect of AI, are extremely important, because we are going to see this flourishing of this new method of creation, but at the same time, we're not going to see the disappearance of human involvement. Just as with photography, painting was not rendered obsolete. Photography just became a different genre. Or with digital painting, physical artworks did not become obsolete. Once again, just a different genre was created. And we have some comments from our viewers. So Alan Crowley points out death is an excellent villain. So there could be films where there is struggle and tension, and the struggle is against death. And Mike Lazine adds to this that death could be a villain with a weapon like COVID. So films about pandemics, for instance, or other diseases and how they could be overcome could also definitely contain plenty of conflict to keep the audience riveted. John H. also writes, there can be positive tension. Think of the tension surrounding rocket launches or landing rovers on Mars as just one example. Or another example could be interpersonal human conflicts and struggles, which are not going to disappear just because there are even radical transformational technological advances. So all of these are great observations. Now, Jason Geringer has a question. He is curious about the process of figuring out how much funding one would need to make a film. When you have a good idea of the film you want to make, what does the proposal process look like? How do you determine a budget in advance? And how accurate are those estimates retrospectively?
I think a lot depends on the project. For a narrative film, the general approach is that you take the script, you break it down into all of its component parts, you create a schedule, and then you create a budget that aligns with your schedule. So if you know you're going to shoot 20 days or 30 days or 40 days, your budget will have that factored in. I think narrative films are a lot easier to know ahead of time what it's going to cost. There's always variables, which are generally the human beings. You might have a director. James Cameron is very well known for really not paying attention to what the plan was. He doesn't move on until he feels like it's perfect, and that will create cost overruns if you're in a situation like that. But if you've thought through everything thoroughly ahead of time, you should be able to have a pretty good estimate about where you're going to end up. There's always a variance that you never hit it exactly on the nose. Sometimes you're a little under, sometimes you're a little over. You have to make a lot of adjustments along the way, along with that. And I think with documentaries, it's a little bit harder because, as Amy was saying, you write it in the edit room, so you could go into the edit room and realize, with Immortality or Bust, I thought I was done for a long time, but I kept showing it to people and not really getting the kind of feedback that I was looking for. And it was missing something. And then it hit me that, like, I needed a little bit more of a personal touch to it. And I went back and I shot Zoltan Isfan's wife talking about his presidential run. And that just clicked it all into focus. It was only like 4 clips, less than 30 seconds each, dabbled into the film. And as soon as that was in there, it felt like it was working in a way that it wasn't before. And I was able to say, okay, we're done, and finish it up. But sometimes you don't know how long the journey is going to be to that sort of place. So documentary is a little bit more different. I think with Jellyfish DAO, what we're looking to do is, ideally, we grow an enormous audience and we're able to entirely fund films. But in the meantime, there's a lot of times that partial funding can really move things forward. So like maybe a partial funding would help me shoot that last bit to pull Ageless together, or maybe another film has to get over the hump of casting, which is once a cast is attached, it's a lot easier to raise more institutional financing. So it's for us, Jellyfish is a potential to help projects in those areas. Maybe in some point in the future we'll fund entire projects, but in the short term it can really help us as filmmakers get over some very important hurdles that we have along the way.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Amy, please go ahead.
I was going to say, just on budgeting a little bit, for narrative films, casting is everything, as Daniel said. So you want as many sort of faces that are recognizable, and say the word famous, but that means a lot of different things in your films. And those costs are the things like when you do a budget, it's called above the line. So those are the talent costs, like the people that are recognizable, the key filmmaker, the writer, the director, and talent are usually that budget's like half of what the other budget is. So you have the cost of actually making the movie with all the crew, crew size from tiny crew being 10 people, like on the small side, up to like my last film I had 160 people, and then you have background, so it's all the people and the workers, and you work like usually 12 to 14 hour days, so that's budgeted. So but those above the line costs where actors cost money and the famous actors cost a lot more money, and so that's kind of part of it. So when I'm budgeting, I usually put a pretty good amount of money up there for the talent. And so for docs, it's a little different. Like the subjects don't necessarily get paid. They might get a stipend for something, but it's a different mechanism. And so the costs usually tend to be a little bit less, but then the editing costs are much longer, because then, you're building the story in the edit. So like on a feature film, you would be editing 3 to 4 months. I mean, some of them are long, like a couple of my current ones. But in docs, you're editing for a really long time, because it's the constant process of editing and putting it together. So it's an interesting, I like to say, like, you back into a box, you kind of have an understanding of like, okay, I have an idea that I can raise this amount of money, and then you budget into that box of what that parameter is. So that's what I like to tell filmmakers. Like you probably don't want to say, hey, I'm going to make this for $20 million. I'm going to try to go raise that money. That would be too large. So you want to try to keep it within a number that is more reasonable that you could raise. And then, independent financing is different from studio financing. So there's a lot of different, factors to think about.
Yes, thank you, Amy. That is quite insightful. Now, Tim, you pursued a crowdfunding approach for the short film, The Last Generation to Die. I remember this because I was one of the contributors to that. And now you're planning to turn it into a feature-length film. So if you could provide some insights as to how the crowdfunding model of fundraising worked for you? What are its advantages? What are its limitations? And what are your plans with regard to creating the feature-length film?
Yeah, well, thank you for supporting many years ago at this point. Yeah, crowdfunding, I mean, it's been a while, so I don't know how much that landscape has changed. I presume it's pretty much the same. But it was a very hard, very time-consuming process, but obviously very rewarding in the end. We ended up with a lot more funding for the short film than we started out looking for, and which really helped a lot. But yeah, I learned a lot about, I mean, you certainly had to engage with social media. And once we kind of found the specific pockets of, folks that were interested in this, it became a little bit more clear about how we could approach and stuff started falling into place. I've also crowdfunded for another short film, which was basically the same process. We were looking for a little bit less money. And so they were both, yeah, just kind of, in my opinion, putting together a really good video seemed to be one of the things people always commented on, just a video that emotionally engages people about, what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and gives a good overview, involving great people from the start and just kind of putting it all out there. All those pieces seem to work pretty well for us in crowdfunding. And in terms of the feature, as Amy and Daniel just mentioned, and as I'm not really a producer, so it's really not so much in my world, but from what I'm learning and picking up as we go along with the feature, there are many different ways to approach it. It seems so far we have received some development funding and investment just to kind of get the ball rolling in the film, and then as they said, Jellyfish is hopefully another avenue that we're building to help us along the way. But in our case, we currently have, I can't say who yet publicly, and it's not like locked, but we have two pretty, fairly high profile actors that are interested, that read the script and really liked it and have basically said, I'm in, and now it's a matter of trying to get the funding. And so sometimes, you can sort of use that internally to help garner some interest and so forth. But it's building, similarly building a great pitch deck, and I'm now working on a short teaser, a video sort of trailer to help present the idea amongst pitches. But we also have some interest from CAA internally. So if you can get an agency involved and interested, then, it can definitely help the game. But as I said, we're going through all this at the moment. So I'll be better to talk about it in the future when we've worked through a lot of this stuff. But so far it's going well. We're kind of off to a good start, I would say. But yeah, it looks like it'll be a combination of some private investment as well as some industry side, potentially like a co-production with a production company, something along those lines. So.
And I just wanted to jump in really quick. I mean, the idea of crowdfunding, I've done it on a number of movies. It's kind of what we're creating here with the DAO. It's building your market, and you're assessing your market earlier on. So the pitch materials is everything. It's learning, like gathering the people that are going to be your market. So ideally, as the DAO grows, that is our market for these movies. And so we'll be growing that. And so everyone can be a part of it. So it's in essence the new crowdfunding. That's I believe that's really what's exciting about it.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for those responses. A bit more audience feedback. John H. writes, interpersonal conflict which does not result in bloodshed. Interesting concept. And I think that speaks to the range of possibilities for creativity and filmmaking that have not been fully tapped yet. A lot of people like blood and gore in films. I'm actually not one of them. I prefer the more nuanced and, let's say, not outright glaring forms of conflict, but ones that give rise to serious thought and reflection and intellectual improvement of the viewers of the films. And I hope there are many other viewers like me. Now, we also have Adrian Benavides, who writes, beautiful discussion so far. My imagination is running wild. I want to be a human of the future. I'm new to transhumanism, and I'm learning a lot about the technologies in this field. Well, welcome, Adrian, and we hope that we can foster a culture of people who think the way that you do. That hopefully is what the efforts of JellyfishDAO will help to bring about, as well as these conversations at our virtual enlightenment salons. So now I want to open this up to the other panelists for any questions and comments they may have. Let's start with Charlie Can. Charlie, any question or comment for our guests?
Yeah, first I want to say I absolutely love what you guys are doing. It kind of aligns with what I've been doing for, I don't know, last couple of 20 years or my whole career. You know, I've been a big fan of futuristic technologies. I've been involved in it for a long, long time. And my goal was always to promote the positive aspects of it. One of the guys that I looked up to and actually ended up becoming really good friends with is Ray Kurzweil. Though I loved his book Singularity is Near, so I wrote a song and then made a music video about it. And then I eventually held a conference where he was my keynote speaker along with 30 other people, including Aubrey de Grey, who you mentioned earlier. And I actually got William Shatner to come because I knew that a celebrity was what was going to get the attention of people. And then I went on to be one of the producers of Transcendent Man, which was the documentary about Ray Kurzweil. And I was the one who brought William Shatner into that. And then Martine Rothblatt produced the film based on Ray's book called Singularities. It was a docudrama, start with Paulie Perrette and Ray Kurzweil, and they put my music into that film. And then more recently, I got involved with RADFest, which is the, if you're familiar with it, I'm sure a lot of the people watching are, it's Revolution Against Aging and Death. That's what it stands for, RAD Festival. And they hold it every year. It's starting in 2016. And I was making positive music videos every year for them that I would show there. And they had a celebrity. They had Suzanne Summers coming every year because she was very much involved in life extension. And so I got to be friends with her, so much so that I actually had her granddaughter, who was a 20-year-old actress at the time. She starred in one of my music videos called Radical Life Extension, where she went from being a little old lady to a young person through this interesting stuff, treatments. Anyway, I got to be friends with Suzanne, and we were talking, and I wrote an entire screenplay with her in mind for a movie that she loved. And sadly, she passed away last year, so we never got to produce it. But I've still got the screenplay, and I'm going to reconfigure it for other celebrities and such. But I think what you guys are really doing is fantastic. And I did see that movie that Amy, I think you were the producer on, the Marjorie Prime. That was in like 2017, I think. That was clever. That was and that you had some big names in there, right? John Hamm and Tim Robbins, I think, and Gina Davis. It was a very clever film, and I don't want to give away the ending, but I really loved the last scene. I just thought that was such a clever ending. But yeah. So look, I tell you what, I'd love to maybe after all this, after today, I'd love to be in touch with you guys and see how we can all bounce ideas or collaborate, or I can help fund, or we can do something together. Because I think, like I said, I love what you guys are doing, and it's kind of stuff I've been kind of involved in for a long time. So I just wanted to say that I don't particularly have any particular questions, because you guys have really done a good explanation here of a lot of stuff. I would say one of the movies that I thought was really well done for futuristic that wasn't really dystopic at all was the movie Her.
Yeah.
So and by the way, I did do a documentary. A music video called Death of Death, which was it was kind of an homage to the film Seventh Seal. So I actually had Death as the bad guy. And, in that film, if you guys probably know, that was an old time Ingmar Bergman film, and where Death, won. Oh, well, I updated it where Death did not win. So that was fun to do. But like I said, it would be great to maybe, collaborate or something in the future. So anyway, that's all I really had to say for now. So I'll turn it back to you, Gennady.
All right. Thank you very much, Charlie. And hopefully there will indeed be room for some collaboration there, because your mission as a filmmaker is very much aligned with what I'm hearing about JellyfishDAO. Now, any responses to Charlie's comments from our
Well,
guests?
I'm wondering, Amy, if you could talk more about Marjorie Prime, because it is such a great movie.
Oh, I was gonna just jump in and say, get some NFTs and be part of our DAO, and then we'll absolutely start talking. That's my producer in me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to necessarily talk about it, but I mean, yeah, it was a great cast, and I mean, I think the thing is like if you ask anybody, do they want to live healthier longer and to get talent? It's an interesting thing because it attracts people. I was at a party last night, a Christmas party with the holidays with a bunch of filmmaker, folks, and the head of the company. We were talking out and on the walking out, and we were talking, and I told him what I was up to at the DAO, and he was like, that's amazing. And and everybody wants that, right? Like whether or not someone says I want to never die, but everyone wants to live healthier longer. So I think it's an interesting way of getting talent involved. And I know that was, the ideas of memory and the ideas of having healthier brains for longer. I mean, I think that's a common human desire. And that's helpful in attracting talent to your projects.
Yes, excellent. And I also wanted to ask a question that was motivated by a comment from our viewer Mike Lazine, who wrote, "It would help if these films are put onto platforms like Amazon Prime, where more mainstream people would see the films." And I wanted each of you to comment on where your past work is available for viewers who want to go after this salon and check out these films, as well as what your plans are for distributing the new films that are created using JellyfishDAO's process.
Great. I can jump in if you guys want, because I actually have to leave soon. Pretty much Amazon Prime, like almost all our films that we've made. I mean, we've made over 40. You can go on our website, intrinsicvaluefilms.com, and there's links to all of them where you can get them. But that streaming platform, usually regardless of where you launch your film, where it first plays, it will end up on a streaming platform. And so all our films, most of them you can find on Amazon Prime or some Amazon platform. Tubi is a free platform. So then you go from the paid, then it kind of goes to the next level. But all films, like most of ours, will come out theatrically and then they end up going to the streaming platforms. There's definitely it's a way of how things are distributed. So that's something you can check out. And so the same for, I think, most filmmakers, they want to try to get some type of theatrical release, although that's getting tougher and tougher because the cost to put your movie into a theater is very high. And so either a distributor is going to offer you upon the sale of the movie, or when you're setting up the movie, they're either going to offer you a deal up front, or you finish the movie and you take it to the market. And so you take it to a film festival or market, and then it's the highest bidders, like the best movies get the best deals with an allocated amount of budget called P&A, prints and advertising, into what is actually spent to get the film into the theaters. And so because you're competing with studio-sized films, and even these streaming platforms that would started as just streaming, like Amazon, like Netflix, as you see, they're becoming such big players in the game, and Apple, that they are also kind of considered studios now because they're streaming. So they're also financing movies. And so our business model has really shifted in the last couple of years with the streamers, but it also does allow filmmakers, you can always get your movie out there regardless of if you're making money on it or someone paid you to put it out there. So most people want theatrical, and then you can come down from now. But because we are so much in a digital world, it is cool, and it's allowed ways for filmmakers to get their films out there. It's really about the logistics of financing and how money is made and recouped. That part is always changing and challenging. But I think the crypto world and doing this and the decentralized is really fascinating. That's part of the reasons why I'm here, for sure.
Yes, and I'm glad that JellyfishDAO is exploring this new model of financing the creation of the kinds of films that we would want to see. And in the meantime, again, go to intrinsicvaluefilms.com, and there you will be able to find more information about films such as Marjorie Prime and Tesla. So thank you, Amy, for joining us today and discussing your efforts as well as your insights into the process of film production, which are quite fascinating.
Thank you, everybody. I enjoyed it. Happy Sunday.
Yes. To you as well, Amy. And now, Tim, I wanted to ask you also, where could people find your films, especially the more longevity-oriented work that you have done, and what are your plans for future films created in collaboration with JellyfishDAO?
Yeah, so I think I'm seeing some stuff being posted on comments. I think some people were posting the sites of my stuff, but it is basically, so my own personal website has actually has a lot of my longevity stuff. So it's just timmaupin.com, and there's a longevity tab. I've made some short documentaries for lifespan.io and just some other documentaries along the way, all short docs. And then you can follow that trail to The Last Generation to Die, or you can go straight to that website, which is just lastgenmovie.com. And so that's where I have my stuff. So that's all basically on Vimeo for the moment. I don't personally have anything yet on Amazon Prime. Usually that's more of a feature film. And as The Last Generation to Die is my first feature. So the hope is it'll land on, that or another big streaming platform. As I think Amy alluded to, it's really hard it's very rare to kind of know where it's going to land before you're making the film, because a lot of that stuff happens in sales and, through festivals and things like that. So it's sort of a meandering path, and sometimes it's very unexpected, but absolutely hopeful for, even a limited theatrical release would be amazing. It is an independent, smaller feature, so the chances of that are a little bit limited, but it does happen. So that would be very exciting. And then, the streamers that's very likely. But again, I can't comment on like a 100% for sure path on that. But I personally think it'll land there eventually. So, I think that's where most of my work lies. So.
Great. Thank you, Tim. And it's interesting, too, what Amy stated about the film festivals being essentially a means to determine the distribution pathway for films and whether they end up going to theaters or going on streaming platforms. It's a way for filmmakers to find potential partners to collaborate with. Of course, sometimes for us film viewers, it seems to be a fairly protracted process because we know this film is being made or has been made, but it has only been shown at a film festival and we want to see it, but we may have to wait a couple of years sometimes in order to be able to find it, say, on Netflix or Amazon Prime or in theaters. So I'm curious also about any ways that you can think of within the framework of JellyfishDAO to accelerate the release of the films, provided that you have the funding and you have a way to arrive at a platform where you earn revenue for the films. Do you think some of that pathway could be shortened?
I definitely do. The challenge is that we don't want to bite off more than we can chew, and try to reshape the entire industry with one 12-person group project. But I'm following very closely the work that some other people are doing in the decentralized film distribution space, and I do think that that's the way of the future. That decentralized distribution will be the way things are done. I'd like ultimately that to be the way Jellyfish does things, but it's an iterative process. We're taking our steps to make the films, and then with the community, with that community behind us, a lot of things are possible. That will make a difference. I think initially we'll have to work with conventional distributors. They own the rails that the trains go down, basically. So it's hard to get around that. It's not impossible. But I think as time goes on and as more and more people get comfortable blockchain and decentralized technology. And I also think the decentralized technology will fade more into the background, so that you'll be using decentralized technology without even realizing it. But as the space develops, I mean, that would certainly be one of my goals, is that the DAO have distribution capabilities and be able to just benefit the community directly from be able to go peer to peer rather than have to go through a third person. That's the great thing about like say Bitcoin. You can send money from one person to another person anywhere in the world on Bitcoin without any intermediary. Because now if you use the traditional bank system, and there's all these middlemen, there's all this friction along the way. In film, the distribution system, you've got exhibitors, you got distributors, you have other, sort of middlemen along the way, all of whom are sort of taking their cut, and you're depending on them for, accurate numbers about their revenues and such. Whereas on the blockchain, everything is public and visible and can be corroborated. You can go peer to peer. You can go directly from the audience to the consumer. Like Charlie's film, if he had made that movie with Suzanne Summers, and I hope you do make it, you could go peer to peer from you as a filmmaker to her audience without any friction or middlemen in between. And to me, like that's the promise of this. That's not something that we've built into the roadmap of the DAO as of yet, but that is definitely something that we would like to incorporate into the future.
Yes, thank you very much, Daniel. And indeed, I hope that this DAO model will facilitate greater disintermediation. I think that would be good for filmmakers, and it would be good for audiences as well, to have that direct connection to the filmmakers, which really also provides motivation for audiences to support them. Because if we are aligned with a filmmaker's vision, we want to help that person or that team. We want to give them money to make sure that the film happens. And then we want to purchase the films. We want to purchase the merchandise. We want to spread awareness. With some of the intermediaries, it's less clear that there is that kind of value alignment, to say the least. And I'm thinking of organizations like the MPAA and the RIAA, which have been loathed, I think justifiably so, by consumers because of how they've treated people who try to watch films or enjoy music. But the DAO model really offers that opportunity for a direct connection between consumers and filmmakers or other content creators, which I think is great for both of these groups. Now, I wanted to
say one more thing about that, which
yes.
is, so let's say Tesla, which stars Ethan Hawke. He has in his contract a net profit deal. All the actors in that movies are supposed to get residuals. And the studio goes out and sells the film and collects the money and then gives accounting. And the accounting is always suspect in one way or another. I'll just leave it at that. It's not so much that they cook the books, but they cook the contracts in a way that, it's really hard to see those net profits. But with the beauty of the blockchain is that you can send out all those payments at the point of sale. Somebody can click, to watch a $5 movie, and the actor who had one line who gets a residual, it can automatically be sent to their wallet at that point of sale. With smart contracts, like all those payments, all those distributions could just happen automatically as part of the movie itself. It'd be programmed into the movie, and when you click watch the movie, all those transactions, all those residual payments and such could happen theoretically at the point of sale, and you're not going to a bunch of middlemen and who are doing their own things with the accounting and then sending you statements. And so that to me is like one of the most exciting things about blockchain technology.
Yes, the seamlessness, the automation of this kind of accounting and indeed the transfer of payments as well are all highly promising. Now I wanted to ask Ben Ballweg if he has some questions and comments for our guests.
You kind of already covered about that, why dystopian movies work so well compared to like pro-longevity ones, is that there's conflict inherent within the dystopian ones and not so much in the pro-longevity. So I don't know if I'm trying to think of how to ask this question otherwise. I guess my question before was something like, how do we as a political party make it so that pro-longevity films, that people aren't maybe so pessimistic about this possibility of curing aging? I guess I wanted to start with Tim. My impression was you had to get going. So any thoughts there?
Yeah, I bought a little extra time, but I definitely at the half hour I've got to run. But yeah, I'll answer that. And yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think even in the the work I do or have done for Lifespan.io, and just this grand, it's just a big conversation about how do you frame these narratives, not just in film but in general. I think about trying to highlight the positivity. And I'm one who it's like I think there are some cautions and some things that we have to think about and work through, and equality for trying to get as many of these technologies to as many people as possible. I think that's all very important. For me, a lot of times I think it just comes down to the simplicity of, I always find it very interesting. I was watching some interview the other day. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I found this in my interviews that I've done with the short docs that I have. People tend to kind of have this aversion towards, well, I wouldn't want to live that long. And, they'll bring up all the sort of counter arguments. But then when you ask them simply, or you frame these really simple questions about, do you want to avoid disease, or, this and that? And almost always they'll say something like, oh, I would like to live on, or, so I was just trying to get to those little like core truths that people actually, I think, really believe. And they're sort of covered by all this extra societal discussion and everything. So that would be kind of my general answer. And I think I try to carry that into the filmmaking. So for example, with The Last Generation to Die, it is really just a family drama at its core. I mean, it's set in the near future. It has, some of the sci-fi icing on the cake type of things. But it really is just looking at how, in my opinion, it's a little tragic in the sense that it looks at how, when this technology does occur, there is going to be some people are going to eventually, they're sort of going to quote unquote age out potentially. So it's this sense of some people just miss the technology. And I think that's the perfect place to set this sort of, exploration and asking questions about it. And also not only that, but just showing the dynamic difference between the possibility and what could occur, and hopefully create a sense of urgency in people to think about that more and just open their minds to these things. I personally really believe in sort of small things like that, sort of entering the psyche. And my hope is that for my film, maybe somebody's not going to walk out of the, theater or the maybe theater, as I just mentioned, or seeing it on a streaming platform. And, they might not be like totally thinking I'm 100% convinced or whatever, but it begins to slowly eke into their mind and their psychology. And they begin to think, oh yeah, that is actually a really interesting way to look at it. Or of course, like they'll see their parents the next time and maybe see an aspect of suffering that they didn't notice, or it wasn't as front of mind, and all that sort of thing. So that for me is just, and I just believe that that's the trail to get people to really think about it. If you can create something that sticks into their mind and they begin to see it, evolve into their own life, that's where the power, I think, of sort of change comes into. Of course, some people are going to be affected by educational YouTube videos and things that just give you the facts. And I think that's great. And we have those are out there. But I'm, as an artist and a creative and a filmmaker, I think there's a whole group of people that won't be completely affected by those things, and you can get to them by emotions and kind of digging into these ideas. So that hopefully wasn't too long-winded of an answer, but that's kind of how I think about all that stuff. So
very good, thank you, Tim. And Alan has quite an interesting suggestion in our internal chat. What about flipping the script so that the longevity researcher, a protagonist in a possible film, is up against the near insurmountable opposition of government regulations and people profiting off of death? What do you think of that as a potential creative concept, a potential premise for a film in terms of having those elements of conflict and tension?
I mean, I think it's a great idea. It's it's all about execution too, though. Like, you know, I get pitched ideas all the time, and it's really like a lot of people have like even like Aubrey the other day, like he pitched his idea and it was a good idea, but it's all about like then how do you execute it? And I think what happens, I think the reason there's so many dystopian films is that, as we said, the needing an antagonist, but there's also a phenomenon in storytelling that you can't make the future too different. So so many science fiction stories, the world is the same world ostensibly, except for this one thing is different. And the reason it's often like that is because to make everything different is such a hard thing for the audience to get their head wrapped around. That they it's so much easier to just change one thing about the future, and everything else about the future is very much like the present. So that's I find that's a very common science fiction thing that happens, and it's a challenge in storytelling. But I think the main difference is, with dystopic films that technology is the problem, and I think it's possible to make movies that there's something else that's the problem, that technology is the answer. And maybe it's government regulations and the death industry. That's certainly possible. As long as the technology isn't the bad thing. You also have to go through that phase in storytelling where you have to establish everything. So you'd have to put in, with that idea, you'd have to put in a lot of time and effort into showing that the government is stomping down the people and profiting off of death, and that alone like pulls it in that more dystopic, could pull it in that more dystopic area. Again, it's all in the execution. It's how you do it. I just think that the main difference, I think, is films that the technology is the problem, and the films that technology is the solution. And that's certainly the type of movies we want to make.
Yes, films where technology is the solution would indeed be desirable in shifting the culture in ways that we would like to see. Now, Tim, Mike Lazine has a question specific to you. He wonders, do you have the new Oculus Quest 4, which has both VR and AR ingrained?
I don't yet. So I got the original Vive way back when. So I was jumping on. I mean, I even have the Oculus Rift DK2 whenever that came out, and they did their sort of follow up to the Kickstarter. So I did also have access to a Magic Leap for quite a while when I was teaching at Pratt, and so I got to explore their version of augmented reality. So really at this point, I'm kind of holding off a little bit, especially with the new Apple announcement of the Vision Pro, which I think I've said to people for a long time. I think when Apple finally gets, releases their V1 of an AR device, that's going to change everything. And it's hard to predict the future. Who knows? I could be wrong, but I think that, in my opinion, that's the sort of first step of, obviously there's a lot to still do with the technology. It has to get shrunk. It has to get to a point where people are going to actually want to wear it. But to see Apple and everything they've done already with the first version of this Vision Pro, I think is pretty amazing. And I'm like holding out to see. Probably not going to buy that one either at $3,500, but I may end up getting an Oculus Quest, but just kind of waiting a little bit to see what happens. And obviously, as everyone here knows, that tech moves so fast that a year from now there'll be a better headset that's cheaper and that sort of thing. So. But very excited about all of it. So thank you for that question.
All right. Thank you for that answer, Tim. And now we have some audience feedback. Bruce Davis writes that we may benefit from emphasis on why the desire for life extension is good, considering the state of life on Earth presently. More people will be interested in life extension if they understood how it would increase well-being. So thank you for that feedback, Bruce. And then John H. says, in regard to films where multiple major changes are projected into the future, the audience cannot identify with such vast global dissimilarity. Now, there could be ways to present it. There just has to be more context setting. There has to be some world building or universe building involved, for instance, in setting the stage for the Star Trek series or the Dune universe as two examples of creative worlds that are very different from our own, and yet people do get into them once they're familiar with the context. So perhaps it could be done, but there has to be more work to kind of lay the foundation for the viewers to understand what they are observing. So now I wanted to ask Art Ramon if he had any questions or comments.
Not so much questions. Well, actually, I do have one. Yeah, I have a few filmmaker friends here in the Tucson area, and I know it's been very difficult for them to raise fund to make the movie. I know a few of them used to do it through like Indiegogo and WeFunder, and hope they would get the amount they needed to make the film. A friend of mine, he was raising funds for a movie, and then COVID happened, and it kind of derailed the whole thing, and that was unfortunate. And I helped him also create NFTs as a reward. So you can offer rewards to, I think, Indiegogo. Question-wise, if you buy one of the NFTs, JellyfishDAO, can you resell that through like OpenSea, secondary market?
I'll have to. It is in a. I don't know if it's ERC20, but it is in one of the formats that can be used on those sites. We are, we've just launched this, in the last 2 weeks. So we are still building the utility into the NFT, and there's more work to be done with that. But I do believe it's the protocol that is accepted by those sites.
Okay, I see it's on Polygon, so that's usually on OpenSea. Because I have a few NFTs that were minted on Polygon, and they show up there as an NFT. So
yeah, there may be at this stage there may be a little bit of work that you need to do because it's not a widely recognized NFT. I think you have to, in your wallet, unhide it, and then there is a little bit on the user end at this stage that may need to be done to list it there. But I believe it's possible.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
All right, and now let's go to Daniel Tweed. He has an interesting remark in our internal chat about the death industrial complex, and he wonders if there is a death industrial complex that might be standing in the way of radical life extension. At least that might be a suitable villainous institution for a pro-longevity film. But Daniel, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the healthcare industry profits off of us being sick, not us being healthy. So, I think the death industrial complex already exists, and it's called the healthcare industry.
Yeah, it's the arms industry, arguably too. I think it was raised by a lot of people that the economy would not grow fast enough if we just dealt in consumer goods. We needed to have goods that we could blow up, so we'd have to make them more of them, highly skilled kinds of weapons. But I'm glad that you guys are using the DAO format to do creative stuff. I think putting the A into STEAM should be a primary transhumanist mission. At first it was just STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, but get that A in there, that art component. and that's something that I really want to see enabled with digital tools that I don't think we're quite taking full advantage of. We could be cataloging all the local events. There's tons of local events people don't hear about or know about, and they just kind of fall off the radar and don't get patronized. There's location science we could add to information components that doesn't get taken advantage of nearly enough. So I really think the power to do collaboration with DAOs, to let people loan each other tools and volunteer for each other's projects and buy each other's art. And speaking of the project that Charlie was mentioning with Suzanne Summers, this could actually be the most fan-supported. If you did make an AI avatar of Suzanne Summers, her death was so untimely. I think no one would cry foul about that. And if Suzanne loved the script, and I mean, maybe there's a real opportunity here with this fully fleshed out screenplay. So that's a very exciting news to hear about. And then I guess on the NFTs, is there a way you could add sort of a collaborative, maybe have a QR code? So, you put your NFT on your car and someone scans the QR code that's next to it, and then they get maybe some affiliate income, or they get a kickback from learning about JellyfishDAO. I'm sure you're in the process of adding all the appropriate bells and whistles, but it looks like a great start, and I'll just stand by for comments.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Like a referral link is what you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's great about these tokens, is that these NFTs, is that you can build that sort of utility into them. And I did make a mistake. I said ERC20, which is an Ethereum, and it is on Polygon. But so far it was putting this all together and organizing and getting the white paper and designing the blockchain and the NFTs, is sort of where we're at in the process. All that utility is stuff that we can and will build into it. But as it stands now, it's just a piece of art, and we will be building the utility in it as we progress as a DAO, and open to community suggestions. We have a Discord, and we have other ways to engage with the community, and that's what I like about this way of doing things, is that it's not a top-down approach to filmmaking. It's more of a flat, where the audience is part of the participation. And the good news is that we have all the site up, we have the NFTs created now. I believe, and I don't have any of our blockchain experts on the call, but I believe adding that type of utility, or adding those things, is very difficult at all. It's just a few lines of Solidity code, to the best of my knowledge. Maybe somebody else who has, I know, Art, you have more experience with maybe, and could weigh in on that.
Quickly, guys, I have to jump off, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for hosting this conversation. I thought it was really amazing, and it's just great to talk with like-minded individuals. And I hope that everybody takes a look at Jellyfish, and thank you again for your support on everything. And we're excited to keep making cool art. And I also just want to say I love that comment on adding I always tell people, it's like, I think that's just sort of missed a little bit, and it's extremely powerful. And if you think about movies that have, or music or whatever, that have changed something about you, like it's it really is profound in how it shifts people's ways of thinking and so forth. So but anyway, thank you again so much, and I look forward to chatting with more of you in the future. So
thanks, Tim.
Yes, thank you very much, Tim. And I hope that The Last Generation to Die will get turned into a feature-length film sooner rather than later. Hopefully, JellyfishDAO's efforts will make that possible. And now, Art Ramon, please feel free to follow up on Daniel's inquiry.
I had a quick follow-up, but go ahead, Art.
Yeah, Art Ramon?
From my experience with the NFTs, a lot of the functionality is on a website. You do need the contract to support certain things, but the website is important to kind of organize, what it does. I'm looking here on OpenSea, and I just kind of searched for jellyfish, but I don't think I found your jellyfish. But there are jellyfish out there. So yeah, OpenSea, being able to show your NFTs through there, that is the secondary market. So if ever any owner of the JellyfishDAO NFTs, decided to sell theirs on the secondary, that's where you would kind of sell it. But
Right.
what was the rest of the question?
Well, just if you knew, well, you were saying that the website, it's basically the front end is where we could build some of that utility. I believe is what you're saying, but
yes, it's
like,
the website
we could put the referral code on the page that's displaying your NFT without having to change any of the programming for the actual blockchain.
The only thing is that the NFT is already created, so you wouldn't have that QR code kind of attached to it. But maybe through the website, you could do some magic on the front end. So.
Well, I did, back in 2017, I did an NFT offering. This was in the wild days before they even called it NFTs. And one of the cool things that I did was I did a site called Crypto Flip Cars, and you could buy the maker, like Mercedes, the model, and then the specific years of the cars. But every time you bought one of the, let's say the specific year of the car, like part of the revenues would go to the model and to the maker. And then if you sold it on a second, if you sold within the site, or I guess, in a secondary place like OpenSea, for the next two sales, the person who initially bought it would be getting a piece of the revenue. So I know that it's, I was working with a programmer on that, and I know like building that type of utility is possible. But a simple QR code, maybe or a referral link, there may be something. I'll talk to our blockchain people. I think there should be something that we could do with that, and it would be a good promotion. Just say, hey, refer, and get a piece of the NFT sale.
And I was just going to add on a comment that digital tokens that accomplish real world results, for example, solar coin. You mint a solar coin by generating a megawatt hour of solar power at your location. That's doing real, tangible real world progress. It's not just an idle kind of, souvenir trading kind of, like lapel pin trading or something kind of thing. But yeah, I think, Filecoin, the Helium network, there's all kinds of digital tokens that actually build out alternate infrastructure functionality. And I love seeing that added onto the NFT and DAO space.
Yeah, that's that particular space is called DePIN, for decentralized physical infrastructure projects, and I mine Helium and some of the other ones, and yeah, it's definitely, again, like I was saying earlier, like the whole world is going to be tokenized. They've Helium has set up a countrywide cell phone service, by people being incentivized through tokens to put little cell phone towers in their windows. And that's there's just so much possibility. And I agree with you that I think that the age of the JPEG that's an NFT is over. Like I think NFTs need to have functionality and utility and do things above and beyond just be a picture. But all my Helium hotspots are NFTs on the Solana blockchain. And I get, and that's how I get rewards, and that's how, I vote for governance, and there's all sorts of utilities that come with that, and that's what we want to do with our NFT. Definitely is part of the governance is to give voting. The more NFTs you have, the more your vote counts, and the more weight that happens.
And you might even say that the amateur radio hobby invented the NFT by sending the postcards of acknowledging a receipt of contact. They're called QSL cards. So those were like maybe the first analog digital quasi NFT. So maybe there'll be some crossover there. I'm a proud ham operator.
Well, it's like they say, everything that's old is new again, you know?
Yes, indeed. So it's fascinating, Daniel, that you were involved in the quasi NFT space back in 2017 when the concept of NFTs was not very well known at all. But I wanted to ask some questions from Jason Geringer, which are more, let's say, tool-based kinds of questions. He wonders, what kinds of tools do you use and which do you think are the best ones? For instance, what kinds of video and photo editors? And he also wonders, when filming on location, what kinds of cameras do you use? How good are the iPhone cameras? Can you actually make a real film with good phone cameras? So if you have some perspectives on those questions, Daniel, that would be interesting.
Yeah, sure. I think generally the types of movies that I and Amy and Tim do are industrial level productions. So we're generally going to be working with Alexa or Red cameras. That's not to say that you can't make a movie with an iPhone. You know, I have friends who've done it. It's certainly possible. I think once you have a movie that has, you know, some sort of name talent to it, everybody feels a lot more comfortable and secure. You know, in general, there's exceptions, I would say, but you know, generally people will feel more comfortable if they see a professional level, you know, Alexa camera with all the gear on it and you know, a lot of lighting. You know, I know that sometimes. You know, one of the first questions whenever we're going out to talent is that they ask, "What's the budget?" And it's not so much that they're concerned about how much their client is getting paid, the actor. It's they want to make sure that they're being put into a movie that all the money's not going to the actor, and then they're going to do it with, you know, an iPhone. You know, and not to say that, and again, not to say that you can. I think there's some filmmakers that have enough of a track record of a visionary approach that they could say, like, look, you know, let's say Quentin Tarantino. Like, if Quentin Tarantino wants, you know, Tom Cruise to be in his movie and he's going to shoot it on the iPhone, Tom Cruise will say yes. But you know, but if you're a filmmaker that doesn't have that sort of cachet, you know, I think they get nervous to hear like, oh yeah, we're shooting in an iPhone, or you just have to do a lot of the singing and dancing to show them like, oh no, it's gonna be awesome. Trust me, you know, we're not skimping out just to you know, just to save money, that this is part of the creative vision, you know. And I've been involved in some movies like that. Let's say that shot on, that goes and shoots on 16 millimeter film, or, you know, other things that are just, you know, the process is baked into the creative and is part of the look. Generally though, you know, for at least Amy and I, Tim's probably a better one to talk about gear, even though he's not here. You know, we hire, you know, directors of photography and editors, and we work with the tools that they want to work with. You know, I'm pretty agnostic towards a tool. And what I always say to my, you know, collaborators often is like, you don't tell Picasso what type of paintbrush to use. You know, it's like, Picasso wants to make a painting, you know, you go and you help him make the painting, you know. And it's sort of like that for me in filmmaking. Like, if a director came to me with like a really, you know, compelling reason to make a movie on an iPhone, like, I would support them 100%. But I don't operate the camera myself generally. You know, the Ageless is a little bit of a different story because you know, documentaries are just done differently, and you know, I pretty much grab whatever camera I can, because for me, you know, like making Immortality or Bust, you know, what was important was what was happening in front of the camera. Like, you know, we probably shot with, you know, 10 different 10 different types of camera in the course of making that film. But I don't think you watch it and go like, oh, they switched from this model camera to that model camera, you know, in between these two scenes, or, you know, what have you. So I'm not the best person to like really drill down on specific cameras and equipment and software. because I'm generally hiring the people that are using those tools and supporting them and what they're doing.
All right, thank you, Daniel, for that answer. And Daniel Tweed writes in our internal chat, there is deep upsampling as a possible resolution improvement in films shot with low spec equipment. And he notes there is a film festival for the Pixel Vision 100 by 100 resolution toy camera from the 1980s called Pixel Fest. Now that must be an amusing set of films to watch, but it seems there's a niche for that as well. So Alan wonders, is there a white paper for JellyfishDAO? And if so, how can we get a copy of it?
Yes, there is what we call a light paper. It should be on our main website, but going to another website on my computer right now would affect my streaming capabilities, unfortunately. But I believe there's a copy of the light paper, or you can DM me and I can get you a copy of the what we call the light paper that lays out the whole vision for the DAO.
Yes, thank you. And we will try to locate it as well. Now, Jason also wonders, how does the JellyfishDAO team collaborate online for the most part? Is it through the JellyfishDAO Discord?
We have done a lot of coordinating, a lot of informational things through our Discord. One of the things that we're trying to make room for is a community manager, because it's sort of challenging to mediate all the different. I mean, I'm sure you guys go through this with the Transhumanist Party, is getting the message out and getting input and getting collection. I think Discord we'd like that to be the primary place to get feedback and interaction with our audience. But we're in a discovery process right now with that, I would say.
Yes, thank you for that response. And we have some more viewer feedback. First of all, Siba Chamuza, our foreign ambassador in Togo, says this is a great initiative. Thank you, Siba. And Bruce Davis says that he has always stated that radical life extension would give our best and brightest more time to create more beneficial technologies that all will benefit from in time. And that's a great observation as well. So now I also wanted to give Alan a chance to ask another question of Daniel. Let's see. I think we'll need to get back to Alan perhaps at a later time. Now let's see if we can get a question or comment from Charlie.
Can you hear me now?
Let's see.
Are you able to hear me or no?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, my computer crashed earlier and I had to switch over to my iPhone. So that's the state of futuristic technology right now. Look, I think, like I said earlier, I thought what you guys are doing is great. I look forward to maybe, working together at some point in the future. I was thinking about different films that tried to talk about life extension or longevity in a positive or thoughtful manner. There's a few out there. I did mention her before. Did you guys ever see a film called The Man from Earth?
That with Bowie back in the 70s?
No. It's a film called The Man from Earth, and it's about a guy who has lived for thousands of years.
I haven't seen that one. No.
It's a pretty amazing film. It's very high level, highbrow, kind of a lot of dialogue, and they touch on a lot of life extension topics just because of the nature of it. But it's a pretty good film. I just thought I'd throw it out there because I know a lot of the people watching might like the film and they should go watch it. But look, like I was saying earlier, I have some different things I'd like to bounce off you guys at some point. So again, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Charlie, for that recommendation. The Man from Earth is indeed an excellent film. It is a kind of intellectual thriller, just the type of film that I like and would strongly recommend to people. And this is one of the best pro-longevity films out there. Hopefully, we will have more available through the efforts of JellyfishDAO. And now, Alan, please go ahead. It looks like we need to unmute you, Alan.
Yep. All right. I think I got it. Yeah. Thank you. And I really appreciate all that you guys and gals at Jellyfish are doing. It's really fantastic. I've dabbled in the film industry and mostly, grunt work and scripts that have been rejected. But I love doing both of those things. So, and of course, this really hits the Venn diagram of my interest of the filmmaking aspect and longevity. So yeah, I saw all of your fantastic friendly faces there on the bottom of the About Us or the JellyfishDAO page. Actually, your About Us takes you to X, Twitter, but at the bottom of the Jellyfish page, you've got your folks identified. I'd love to be on there as you got directors, producers, you got everybody but a production assistant in there. So if you need one of those, just let me know. But otherwise, I think you guys are all doing fantastic work. So thank you and keep it up. And thanks for coming out today.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alan. And now we have 3 minutes left in our virtual enlightenment salon today. We have a practice of giving our guest the last word. So Daniel, what would you like to say in the last 3 minutes to conclude our salon?
Well, the thought that just keeps coming back to me actually is about, because I'm about to go home for Christmas, and I have an older brother. He's 3 years older than me, and he died 4 years ago. And he didn't take really good care of himself. He smoked and drank, all of his life, and and he's gone. And that's gonna be. And he actually had a massive heart attack on Christmas Eve, 4 years ago. And now I've lived longer than him, and I'm going to see my dad, who's 86 and works out every day, and still can drive his car, is sharp. There's definitely signs of aging, but I just think about that difference, and even in my own family, about the tragedy of somebody who's died before these interventions are available, and how my dad is taking advantage of what's available now to make his life better. And if somehow we can capture that and what we're doing with the DAO and with our films, that's what I'd like to do.
Yes, absolutely. And it is imperative, I think, for us to consider what are the ways in which we can motivate the people we care about to pursue longer lives. And I wish you, Daniel, and everyone at JellyfishDAO all the best in creating these techno-optimistic pro-longevity films that can inspire both healthier living on an individual level, as well as activism and advocacy for the promotion of the kind of scientific research and the kind of cultural transformation that we need in order to get to a future where aging is reversed, where we can live lives of open-ended duration and open-ended abundance. So thank you very much to Daniel. Thank you to Amy and Tim, who joined us previously. Thank you to our excellent erudite panel of USTP officers and members, and to our highly engaged audience as always. As we head into the holidays, let us remember Daniel's words, and let us all strive to live long and prosper.